Hey guys, so we've been going over the great Koukl chapters from his book Tactics, and we've been learning such a lot. So chapters 1 to 6 cover the game plan, and tonight we're doing chapter 6. Chapters 7 to 14 cover finding the flaws. If you remember, the questions that we ask with using the Columbo tactics have to do with finding flaws, first of all, understanding the person, but eventually you want to find flaws and deal with those. So the second half of the book is going to focus there. But tonight in chapter 6, we're just going to be looking at perfecting the Columbo tactic. It's very important, and apparently it's the foundation of all his other tactics, and so he has spent a lot of time on it. And let's dive into chapter 6 called Perfecting Columbo. So I like the fact that Koukl focused here on a passage that we've referenced so many times, and that is 1 Peter 3:5, which tells us to always be ready. Okay, always be ready to give a reason for the hope that lies within. And there are 3 ways to be ready. We can anticipate, reflect, and practice. And so those are actually the 3 ways of perfecting Columbo. You can spend a lot of time anticipating what's going to come your way, and you can think about the situation after it's taken place, and you can appraise and self-assess. And so reflecting is very important because you need to learn from your mistakes. And then, of course, practicing. I like the practice method that Koukl uses. So sometimes when he's driving in the car and he's listening to the radio and he hears a discussion, he'll often turn on the volume and actually answer that person for himself in the car and practice how would one answer that kind of question. And so I think that's quite a good tactic. So it's anticipate, reflect, and practice. Right. The point was also dealt with. What do you do when Columbo tactics are used against you? You can politely refuse to answer a question. You can also ask a person to restate their point and their reason for that point. So be on the alert for questions that are not really questions. So sometimes people want to make a statement and cover it, sort of try to pretend that it's actually a question, but meantime it's a statement. So for example, who are you to say that? Or I actually had an example of that, something that happened to me last week. And in hindsight, I definitely did reflect. In hindsight, I thought to myself, you shouldn't have answered that question. And because it wasn't really a question, it was actually a statement. So what you can do, what he recommends that you do in this situation, is you point out to the person, you say, your question is a bit confusing because it sounds to me like you're trying to explain a point, but you're using a question. Could you rephrase that as a statement and let me give it some thought? All right. I like, once again, his manner of communicating is always amicable. So we are free to ask people to rephrase their questions, especially if we're feeling that this isn't really a question, it's more of a statement or an accusation. Or you can revert to Columbo question 1, tactic 1, and just say, what do you mean by that? Okay. Then I also liked how he pointed out there are 2 basic attitudes to approach all of this with. Is your intention to persuade, or is your intention to refute? Because one is more aggressive than the other. And persuasion is often more amicable. He also noted that when he's reflecting, he would ask himself, so what is an ambassador? What is a good ambassador? We've covered that already in chapter 1, knowledge, wisdom, character. Okay. Did I have accurate knowledge? If you're reflecting and you realize, oh, that's where I went wrong, I didn't have accurate knowledge, then go and brush up your knowledge. If it was actually a lack of wisdom, you didn't handle it artfully, you didn't have the artful method down pat, then learn from that, figure it out for next time. Or if it was a character issue, maybe you got upset, or maybe you were rude or whatever, then learn from it, because character, as you recall from chapter 1, can absolutely ruin your message. Okay, and then in terms of all of this preparation, reflecting, anticipating, practicing. In terms of all of that, he made a lovely point. He says, even people who don't usually like taking tests don't mind them at all when they know all the answers to the questions. Okay, so if you've prepared your general topics, your general things that you think will come up, then you're not going to mind being asked the questions. Otherwise, questions can be intimidating. Okay, guys, and in terms of being ready, I just would like to share a personal conviction. I attended an apologetics conference over the weekend. It was fantastic, excellent as always, offered by Apologetics SA, and really wonderful. But something occurred to me, and I think it's a point worth making. Okay. Over the last 20, 30 years, we've been brushing up our apologetics in terms of the creation evolution debate. And we've been trying to prove Christianity, against evolution. And, 20 years ago, students would come home from university and they'd be confused by Darwinian points that are being made by the lecturer. And it took a while for that to develop into a formal response by the Christian community, where we have things like Answers in Genesis, Creation Ministries Institute, books like Apologetics from Koukl, just various, it took a while for the Christian community to respond. And, 10 years ago already, I thought to myself, we've won the argument, guys, really. And then we started hearing that evolution's actually been thrown out the window, and scientists are now acknowledging that there is a force behind creation. Although they may not recognize it as God, they're acknowledging this force. And but our problem is that evolution is still in all the school books and all the textbooks, and so the message takes very long to get to the layperson. But I do feel that scientists have mostly thrown the evolution thing out the window, and it's pretty old hat. And so the arguments with atheists and stuff are kind of a bygone era, I feel. This is just my personal opinion, okay? I think that there's a bigger conversation to be ready for and to prepare for. And I think we cannot wait for the Christian community to develop formal responses. It was great when we had Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministries, and I still use those and access them and love them, and they're wonderful. But we can't wait until there are formal things like that on this topic that I'm going to mention now. But the queer theory is a big thing in our world, and Christians are not ready for it. Christians don't know how to respond. And, Augustine said that something along the lines of, and I'm not an Augustine fan, okay, but I do like this quote of his. He said something along the lines of, and I'm going to paraphrase it, something along the lines of, if your faith cannot answer the issues of the day, then it's irrelevant. It's, So I feel the issues of our day are queer theory and the whole woke agenda. And we are not ready for that. We don't know how to prepare our children to answer those things. We don't know how to encourage fellow Christians to answer those things. And the fact is that we need to make work of that. We need to anticipate, and we need to reflect, and we need to practice our answers to those things. I feel quite strongly about that. I think that if we don't, we will fail our children, and we will fail fellow Christians, and the church will fail the congregation if they cannot start equipping people. So in terms of, all the stuff that we're doing, learning from Greg Koukl, how to respond, it's great. And I'm just so excited and pleased that we have this available to us. But I think we need to be ready for what's happening in our world. And so I bought a couple of books over the weekend at the Apologetics Conference. I bought The Toxic War on Masculinity by Nancy Percy. And she had another one, I think it was Love Your Body or something. I bought that one as well. And guys, these are not easy topics, but I'm doing it for the sake of my children and for the sake of being able to actually have a ministry in this world and be able to answer people. If we cannot answer this topic, our faith is going to become null and void. Didn't 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 Elon Musk say something similar the other day? If the Christians can't answer and speak up, they're going to die. Well, it's true. We can't not have an answer. And that's our challenge. And it's not nice. It's not a nice thing to have to face. It's not a nice task to have to prepare for this. But we don't have a choice. So when we're done with this book, I'd like to maybe pick up on that kind of preparation a little bit. But in the meantime, guys, this was chapter 6. It was the end of one whole section from the book. And the second half of the book begins with chapter 7. And that's a whole section by itself. And we're going to actually take a break till the end of the month and pick up again on chapter 7 in the new month.